Good morning, everyone. Clocking in from Amsterdam. I'm pretty sure everyone else is. So many people are clocking in from different part of the world, but I'm currently in Amsterdam. It's morning. It's a beautiful day here. Welcome to Building African Fashion Africa Fashion Conference. Today, we are having this um, conference on producing as a new brand with Moreni KG Edward Etu. I would be introducing her and I would allow her to take the floor to let us in into our beautiful mind and what she has put together to present to us. Um, Moreni KG is a garment production consultant and trainer. She has over 14 years of experience in the fashion industry, and she was trained in South Africa. She has evolved from skills seamstress to dedicated educator in pattern making and garment production. And she has also worked with designers like Maya Tafo in Nigeria and a couple of others ones, other fashion businesses across like that. And she's also the project manager and trainer at SHF Trains. Oh my God, I'm so sorry. Yeah, this is so our consultation work with both fashion startups and establishment businesses revolves around enhancing production facilities, fostering effective team dynamics, and streamlining operational procedures. Morenikeji remains committed to the advancement of fashion entrepreneurs, emphasizing the significance of education and empowerment in the realms of successful garment production. So I would leave the room to Moreni Keji to come in and present.
Okay, great. Um,
I am really, really sorry, Moreni Keji, for ordering
you again, just as I said earlier.
I'm really, really sorry.
It's okay. I hope my. Can you hear me loud and clear?
Yeah, I can hear you.
All right, great. Okay. Hello everyone. Good morning, good afternoon from wherever you might be joining from. My name is Moreni KG Edward Etu. So I'm just going to do a brief reintroduction of myself. So yes, I have 14 years of work experience within the garment industry. I started off basically with my training in somewhere around Yaba here in Nigeria before going to South Africa for my fashion design diploma course. And this was between 2009 and 2010. I stayed back to gather work experience for like 4 years more. And I came back to Nigeria in 2013. When I got back to Nigeria in 2013, I realized that there was a shift in my mind. Although I had wanted to launch a brand, a personal brand, but I realized that there were a lot of things that I still needed to get a good hang of. And so I had my very first paid internship in Nigeria at the OSC College of Fashion. And I think that was my very first experience and exposure into garment production, really. I think as at that time, she was possibly that OSC College basically, and the factory was possibly the very first mass garment production brand that I knew of, that I knew about in Nigeria. And so that process or that internship that I had with her, with that brand sort of opened me up to the possibilities of the garment production industry. And I realized that it was just love at first sight, so to speak, for me. And I did a stint of about 3 months there, then went on to work with Maya Tafo as the head of operations women's wear, where of course learned a whole lot about intricate details when it comes to production and all that. So basically my journey from my diploma certificate course in South Africa to the point where I'm at now was a gradual process of learning, and coming to terms with what my strengths are within the industry. And I don't like to refer to myself as a fashion designer because I know that's not my core, my core strength, so to speak, or my focus in that sense. So because I've been able to garner more how do I put it, knowledge, and skills required to basically run production from start to finish. All right, so having done that, I also realized at some point that I had interest in, teaching other people, empowering people, just basically to create structures for brands basically to kick off their production projects. So having said that, I would like to meet everyone on this call and know that, okay, it's just about 10 persons for now. So we're just going to do a quick exercise just to get the class started, the workshop started. Please, in the chat box, just say your name, drop your name and where you are joining us from. Quickly, let's have that done so I can get to know and just to have an idea of where we are all calling in from. All right. Hi, Arena. I hope I pronounced your name well, Arena, from London, UK. Thanks for joining in. Okay, great. She said I did. All right. I'm assuming it's a she. All right, more answers. Oh, okay. I see Madam Shola is on the call too. Udochi from Addis Ababa. Thank you, Udochi. Hi, Udochi. Papa from Amsterdam. Thank you. Thank you for joining in. Hi, Randa. Sudani is living in Cairo. Hi, Randa. It's nice to meet you. Okay. Bello joining in from London. Hi, Bello. No, it's fine. It's good. Okay, if we can have just 1 or 2 more persons. Hi, Flor. Flor, I hope I'm pronouncing it well. Flor from UK. Melanie. Hi, Melanie. It's nice to meet you all. Okay, great. Yeah, I got your pronunciation. That's it. Okay, I think we can start now. So the other thing I want to ask us quickly before we proceed is, I want to confirm if everyone on this call is a startup, basically. If your brand is an emerging brand or a startup, can you just put that in the chat box also? Okay, hi, Jochi from Calabar. It's good to have you here. Okay, so I want answers on your like your brand, how old your brand is basically. Okay, I'm here to start. Currently looking for a garment manufacturer. Great, that's great. Arena. Who else wants to drop that? If I can get 2 more answers and then we'll start. Can we get more answers, please? Let's see. Okay. I would like to believe there are other fashion enthusiasts here. Okay, great. So Randa says 1 year in business and still learning. Great, that's good. Okay, 1 more person. One more person and then we'll start. One more person and then we can start. Okay. Do you want me to call names? Do you want me to call on someone? Okay. All right. Okay. I think Shola sent a direct message to me here to know who's helping the startups. Okay. All right. So that we don't waste too much time, I think we'll just continue from here. Okay, so basically the topic for today's workshop is producing as a new brand, of before you even start to consider production. And Instagram page where I, asked a question: are you production ready? So I'm going to also, I want this session to be very interactive, to be as interactive as possible. You don't necessarily have to unmute your mics, but you can please post your responses in the chat box again. So I want to ask a question. Do you think at the current state that you are at, do you think that you are production ready? So if you are, say yes. If you are not, say no. And if you're not sure, say, I'm not sure. Just type it in the chat box. Okay. So Arena says no. Okay, Georgie, I saw your response for the earlier question. Great. Okay. Ngozi says yes, rebranding. That's great. Okay, so she's ready for production. Can we have more responses? Randa says yes. Okay, that's great. That's great. That's great. Okay, Randa has been in business for 1 year, so yeah, that makes sense. Okay. All right. Now, I want to help you answer that question in a more assertive way, in a way that makes you more sure that you are ready for production indeed. And so I'm going to take it from the very first step. What makes any fashion brand known is because you want to sell a product. So the first question I want to ask you is, what is your product type? Do you know what your product type is? Are you happy with your product type? Are you happy with the samples of your product types that you've been able to somehow maybe carry out the sampling phase, and all that? So I'm also asking that question again. Someone can just unmute their mic if you want to respond to that. At the moment, what would you say about your product? Would you say your product is ready? Who wants to answer that question? I think I'm going to ask Arena.
Hi.
Would you say your products are ready?
No, I wouldn't say I am. So I'm at the stage where I'm working with a garment company to produce samples. So I'm still pattern
Okay.
making and hopefully producing my first physical sample in the next month or so.
Okay.
So I think, yeah, I'm a couple of steps behind being ready for, I guess, bulk production.
Okay, that's great. Thank you for answering. All right. So basically, just as she said, she's at the point where she's running samples and working with a manufacturing partner. So I'm just going to go through a quick list. Like I did like 5 checklists to ascertain if you are production ready. So the first thing that you want to do, I hope we have our notes with us where we can just pen things down. It's possible that you're not hearing something new today, but trust me, there's always something new to learn. Maybe I'm just going to reemphasize certain things that will make you realize that, okay, this thing is very important, because everyone is aware of the fact that information is like really out there now. So we live in an information world where we have access to easy information. But at the same time, I'm here to reiterate it because, number one, my expertise in the industry and my experience so far, so if I say certain things, it's because I understand the importance of doing those things. So the first thing you want to be sure of is your designs. Are your designs finalized? And I say this because oftentimes we've realized that when a fashion designer comes up and they have ideas in their heads, you know, it's great to have ideas. It's great to be creative and all that. But the first thing that you must even establish in your heart or in your mind is that you are in that business to make profit. You know, there are lots of, you know, particularly creatives fall into this quagmire of thinking that, oh, I'm just going to let my creative juices flow. You know, I'm just going to be creative and all that. Fashion is a business. Yes, your creativity is involved in the entire process, but fashion is a business. So you would do well to actually see it like that from the beginning. When you have that kind of outlook from the beginning that I'm into this to run a business and to make profit, it really changes, you know, the entire scope for you. And so when you realize that, oh yeah, fashion, I'm going into this, I'm starting up this brand because I want to make profit, then it helps you to put certain measures in place, including finalizing on your designs. And one of the disadvantages of not finalizing on your designs is the fact that once production starts, you start having a lot of back and forth. So let's use Harina as a point of contact, like a point of reference. You know, I'm going to be using her a lot to buttress certain points. So Arena has been in the industry she started her brand like a year ago or so. Yeah, so she has 1 year. I just want to be sure that I'm not mixing it up. Arena said she's okay. No, I wouldn't use Arena. I'm going to use someone who has been there for like a year or so, which should be Randa. Okay, so I'm going to use Randa as a case study. You know, so imagine if Randa has like 2 or 3 designs that she wants to produce, and yes, they are perfect designs, they are outstanding. Maybe she probably made one for herself and somebody liked it on her, and you know, that person said, oh, I would like you to make something like this for me. And so of course, because she has had that kind of demand from a few persons around, she's thinking of the fact that, oh, let me produce this, let me mass produce it, let me produce more quantity so that I'll be able to sell and make profit. Now let's say that's the case for Randa, but she's not been able to put down the design. She hasn't sketched it out. She hasn't finalized on the details. She hasn't seen what it's going to look like on a size 10 person, a size 12 person, a size 14 person. You know, she hasn't done all those findings, or she hasn't concluded on the components, the feet, you know, the silhouette, and a whole lot of other things about that particular design. And then she just goes off to a manufacturing partner. Do you think she's ready? Of course, she's not ready. So the point of finalizing your designs basically is to make sure that anybody who sees the design is able to say that, okay, these are the things or the details or the components that are going on this particular style. And these are the things that are also going to be needed while manufacturing this particular style. So I like to break it down to that point so that we understand the details that are involved in the process of what's called production. And so I like to also break down the production phases of garment production in its entirety into 4 different stages, 3 different stages. Pardon me. I hope I'm not rushing. I want to be sure that I'm not rushing. Can we still hear me? Is my pace good enough? I'm not rushing. Okay, so great. So basically, you want to have, yes, someone said like a tech sheet before, exactly. So basically, it's the fact that your designs must be out there for someone to see. Out there meaning that it has to be sketched or illustrated. Now you take it a step further, and then you also like do it like a tech pack on your designs. So the tech pack basically talks about the details, the dimensions in terms of measurement, you know, that you are adopting in creating or manufacturing that particular style. So it's important to have this broken down, like you need to take time out. So usually I would say to people, fashion designers or business owners, that the very first stage of your the entire garment production process is the pre-production stage. the pre-production stage. Now, the pre-production stage starts with the conceptualization phase, which is basically the period where you are, your designs are coming to life, what we typically refer to as product development. That's the time that you are working on your product, refining things, changing certain things, because guess what? You'll be surprised that something that looks good on a body that is a size 10 may not necessarily look good on a body that is a size 16. And so these are the things that you want to work on in terms of your concept, your designs. You want to finalize your designs. You want to have it documented. You want to have it sketched out, illustrated. You want every detail to be ascertained. You want to have samples done, prototypes. You want to have it done. Maybe you can decide what your sample size might be. Your sample size can be 10. It can be your size. It can be, you can look for a fit model also that you can use that person's body type as your sample fit or your fit model, basically. And, having done that, what that process helps you to achieve is basically to be sure of how that product would look like at the end of the day on different body types. Like I said earlier, because it's a business, you don't want to run at a loss. You want a situation whereby once you have produced, you want more demands coming in. You want someone to see that particular item on someone else and be like, oh, where did you get this from? And they can easily say, oh, you can get this from so and so. And so because you want that kind of, you are foreseeing or projecting that kind of eventuality, it means you need to do your own work. You need to do the background work, which involves finalizing on your design and approving your prototypes or your samples. Now, it's possible to actually outsource the sampling phase to your manufacturing partner. I think that's what Flo spoke about earlier, about her working with a manufacturing partner currently, so she's been able to source for that, thankfully, because the second point basically on that list, the checklist that I was referring to earlier, is to identify who your vendors are, your vendors and your manufacturing partners. You need to do that homework. It means that you need to be sure of, having ascertained the things, the components and the details going on your garment. You need to now know where you can easily source for those materials, the trimmings, the fabric, the zippers, whatever it is, whatever detail that you want on your garment, you need to ascertain that you have a vendor that can readily provide you and supply you with those things as at when due. So at the same time, you're also looking for factories, garment factories, who that are competent. They have the right technical skills and machines to handle the kind of production that you have. I mentioned something earlier about your product type. Like, I want to be sure that at this point, for most of us, we already have an idea of what our product types are. Because your product type also determines the kind of production that you would have. It may seem as though I'm digressing, and there's a whole lot to talk about, definitely, but I'm touching base on this because it's important for the whole scope of your production project. So if your product type is something that maybe you just want to be creating pieces that are, for example, an environmentally friendly product that is, that you can say it's artisanal made, an artisan made it, slow fashion and all those things, you definitely may not need to go to a manufacturing partner in that sense, like a big, in that case, you're not doing a large scale production. In fact, you can even handle that kind of production in-house, which is referred to as cottage production, cottage scale production or home scale production. In that sense, you can actually just hire a few hands that can help you work in-house, so that is dependent on your product type. And then of course you now have the other end of the scale, which is the large scale production and mass production, where you have people that want to, like, of course you have brands like Zara and all those brands. I'm using that as an example, where you can tell that they want to mass produce, they want to produce in thousands of numbers. So your product type basically tells you, and of course your product type, your business model, like your business plan, all those things basically inform the kind of production, the scale of production that you'll be going for. So now going back to what I was saying about Flo, she's working with a manufacturing partner. So it's possible to run her samples with them. There are some factories that offer such services, who you just go to them with your line sheet, the designs. Typically your line sheet has your tech sheet rather has your sketches, and it has the details of what you want on your garment. The details of the garment. Does it have a zipper? Does it have pockets? Does it have inseam pockets? Things here and there. Your tech sheet has that. So you go to your manufacturing partner with your tech sheet. But that also tells you that before you go to meet them, you must be sure of what you want, because they would just take it up as, okay, you are bringing this design to us and we're going to make samples of it. And then, of course, through the sampling phase, you do your fittings with your fit model, and then you approve. If you're okay with it, then they go into the main production. So like I was saying earlier, there's a pre-production stage of a garment production. There's the production phase itself, or production stage itself, and then there's the post-production stage. Of these three stages, all the things that you need to do through all the three stages, there's nothing that is, how do I put it? Every stage is important. Every process within these stages are important. People typically want to wing it, particularly in a region like Africa, where maybe we have limited resources. You probably want to cut costs. For example, with your conceptualization phase, you should actually work with a design team that can help you bring certain things to life, because you cannot be a jack of all trades. If in fact, as a designer, maybe you have the capacity to draw, you can sketch, you possibly don't have the capacity to come up with a tech pack. So there are things, or there are areas that you would realize that you may not have the necessary skills to handle yourself. So you would need to either recruit or hire, or outsource, or get an in-house team to work with you. So there's that part where you get a design team to work with you, or you outsource that process. And of course, during the pre-production phase also, or stage, what you also need to do is also carry out researches. Like I said earlier, because it's a business and you want to make profit, you also need to start thinking ahead of time of where your sales channel, what your sales channels will be. It may look as though I'm picking from different sectors, but the truth is, it is a wholesome thing. The process of garment production is wholesome. Yes, there's the technical part of it, which we'll still delve into, but at the same time, there's still the business side of it, which is what actually drives the technical part of it. Once you see it from the angle of, I'm going into this to make profit, then it informs the kind of decisions that you make in terms of the different stages or processes that you need to take, throughout all the stages. Now, when you move on into the production actually can, in some cases, now in the case of Flo, her own production level stage is inclusive of the sampling. Ideally, your sampling should come up with during your pre-production stage, because what should be happening is that, okay, maybe you just found someone in-house, or a tailor that is very good, or a sample machinist that is highly skilled, who can just interpret the design that you have sketched with all the details. The person produces a very first prototype. It can be in a muslin fabric, or a cheap fabric, just to interpret it, and then you see the fit on your fit model and all that. You do that first. Or in this case, referring to Flo now, you take it to a manufacturing partner. Maybe you don't have access to someone who can do that for you, but you take it to a manufacturing partner and they run that sample process for you too. So now in the production phase, there is the sampling. Now there's the fitting process also within that sampling phase. Now that sampling phase can be one that is extended sometimes, and it is very important. There's no need to rush that process, because the purpose of that particular process or stage is to ascertain and finalize your designs, just as I said earlier. So we are still on that very first point of our checklist. You want to ascertain your designs. Are you happy with the fit how it looks, the end product. Is it something that you are sure that people would be happy with? And guess what? Even after making the samples, you have the liberty to have a certain people. So you can run samples for different sizes, for example. You can run for a size 10, 12, 14, 15, 16, and have people, could be friends, family, wear them, and then you see what it looks like on them. And that gives you a you are informed, you make a well-informed decision, and then you can now proceed into the main production itself. The second checklist that you want to be sure of, the second thing on the checklist is identification of vendors and manufacturers. Just like I said earlier, establishing relationships with reliable vendors of your raw materials and producers. Let me cite an example. Nigeria is such an interesting terrain, particularly for fashion designers, because oftentimes, even as an owner of a brand also, I found myself in such situations where, let's say I went to the market for fabric sourcing, and then I found this particular fabric that I really like. And I've felt the hand, what's it called? Felt the texture and all that, touched the texture and felt it, and I'm happy with it. And then maybe at that point, I can't afford to buy a lot of yardage. And then I go back, run the sample. By the time you go back, that fabric is out of stock, maybe because someone else has seen it and has bought it. Now, when you ask that particular vendor if they still have the same fabric, it becomes a case of, I'm not sure if I'm able to source for it, or it will take so and so number of days or months or years possibly to even be able to source for it. And that's because there's limited access to these raw materials, because they also import it. And so when you think about limitations like what I just mentioned now, it is very important to find a vendor that you can rely on, a vendor that has the kind of capacity to possibly even reorder from their own source. I don't know if we understand what I'm saying. Are we still with me? If you're still with me, just put in the chat box that, yeah, I can hear you. Okay, great. Thank you, Flo. So you want to ensure that, thank you, Arena. You want to ensure that you have vendors that you can rely on throughout your production cycle. Now, guess what? Let's say you were even able to source for that particular fabric at the beginning. You got the necessary quantity that you needed. But at some point, after making sales, you realize that there is a best-selling product. And that particular product, people just really want it. Now you want to go back to that same vendor, and the fabric is not available. And that's one of the reasons why you need to be sure that you get a vendor that you are very certain that they will be able to meet your demand per time throughout your production cycle, or throughout the cycle, that collection cycle, throughout the period that your collection will be sold for before you decide to go into another collection. Now, the third thing on the checklist is detailed planning. You need to have created an in-depth production plan that includes quality control protocols and contingency plans. Now, when you look at it, this may somehow apply to people who are running in-house production, but that is also very important, like for you to understand, okay, so how is my production going to run? What's the plan? Because one thing that you want to try to achieve through your production is a short turnaround time. You want your lead time to be as short as possible. That is what makes production profitable in that sense. The fact that you're able to do much more within a limited time, because, imagine if you had spent money on marketing, on advertisement and all those things, and then there's a process that is now slowing the entire thing down. Maybe your vendor is not supplying a particular thing. You don't want that kind of thing to happen to you. So naturally, I would say production, a collection cycle, basically, and including production and everything, should typically take up to like 6 months. I'm sure some of you will be surprised at the amount of time I just mentioned now. Typically should take like 6 months, and of course that would give you enough time to plan, to walk through your conceptualization phase, to walk through your marketing plan, sales plan, and all those things, which takes me to the third stage of the garment production stage, which is your post-production. Now, your post-production basically entails the sales channel. Where are you selling? So you need to have done your homework, because you also don't want to tie capital down. You don't just want to produce and then you don't have where you are going to sell off products. Now, using myself as an example, I learned the hard way actually. I remember there was this particular year where I actually, I didn't make solid plans for my sales channel. I was just relying on Instagram selling. I just felt, okay, I was just going to do Instagram selling and all that. And I produced about 50 pieces. And this was in 2019. I'm making it as relatable as possible so you would understand why I'm emphasizing certain points here. And it was at the end of 2019. And I produced, so I did a photo shoot, so there was a photo book, posted and all that. Now, ideally, in the year 2020, January, February, I was supposed to actively, start selling on Instagram. And then COVID-19 hit. That was 2020, February. COVID-19 hit. If I tell you now that I still have about few pieces from that particular collection that I haven't sold, I have them stuck somewhere in a box. Why did I have that kind of experience? Yes, there are cases of things eventualities that we did not plan for, and that's why it's always great to have a contingency plan. Now, if I had actually thought about the fact that, okay, where can I sell this products? What are my sales channels? If I had done that particular homework, if I had done that well, the truth is I would have just maybe staggered a bit for the period of time that every other business also experienced the same kind of staggering, but at some point would have picked back up again, and then moved on as normal as life was, because life is back to normal to a very large extent now, but because there was no plan in place for my post-production activities, I made a loss. It was a huge loss. So it's also important to, do certain things ahead of time for your post-production. So like I said, there's the pre-production, production, and the post-production stage when it comes to garment production itself. Now, detailed planning. So the detailed planning definitely just talks about the entire thing, the schedule of the production itself, the post-production, and every other thing. Now, the fourth point I want to highlight on your checklist, that should be on your checklist, is your financial readiness. How ready are you financially? The truth is, production is very capital intensive. Even if you were doing a small scale production, even if you were doing it in-house, it's costly, it's expensive, which is why you must also be financially ready. What's your plan? Are you getting sponsors? Are you putting in your personal funds? And that's why it's also great to start sourcing for manufacturing partners, because that way, when they have your tech sheet, when they have when they have an idea of what your garments or your sketches look like, what your products are, then they can let you know the cost of it, or the things that are going into the product, the raw materials and everything, and then you can have a proper costing done, and that way you know how much you are spending on your production. It's very important. You cannot go into production blindly. You can't. There are too many things that can go wrong. Too many things. Production, and that's why even for the timeline, the production cycle that I mentioned, at least you need 6 months for the entire process. The reason why you do that is because you want to be able to cover all your tracks. Now, is it possible to run productions like lesser than that time? Yes, definitely. And that happens when, after a while, you've gotten a hang of it. There are processes that you have put in place, after you must have developed like your SOPs and all those things. That way, your production, lead time can be shorter. But as a startup, please do your assignments, like do everything that you need to do, all the findings. And then, of course, the last point here is team skills and communication. So the fifth point on that 5 checklist that I said earlier is to ensure that you have a workforce that is equipped with the required skills. People who, team members who can easily integrate technology to optimize productivity. That's very key. And the reason that's key is because Okay, Anifa from Congo used YouTube and Instagram and a clever way to do a catwalk show during COVID too. Oh, that's an interesting point you just raised there. Yes, I remember seeing that actually, but the truth is I didn't have access to that. I did not have access to that. And I'm sure a lot of people did not even have access to that. And so many people didn't, many people lost. A lot of business owners actually lost, particularly those who had done certain things like planning ahead into the year 2020. So like I was saying about the last point, you need to ensure that your workforce is equipped. And of course, when it comes to hiring people or recruiting skilled hands within the industry, I've heard a lot of complaints. Of course, people give feedback that, okay, people tend to talk about their expertise, like their technical level. Meanwhile, when you now hire them, when they come on board, you see that, hey, this person is not even up to par at all, that they are lacking in such skills. Now, I like to say it this way. You need someone who is teachable. In fact, I would rather hire someone who isn't, if I find someone that is not highly skilled, I would rather choose someone who has good soft skills than someone who is highly skilled and has a bad behavior. Please note that clause that I said, the clause that I added. And that's because people who have good soft skills like teamwork, good communication skills, and all those things, you can teach them. You can teach people on the job. This is definitely addressing people who are recruiting or doing in-house production. So when it comes to hiring, you can actually work with people, like teach people, train people to be up to par to what you want, and that's where the standards of operation comes in, because once you have been able to create, and that process of creating your SOPs can be very tedious, but it's always worth the while. If you're able to walk through your standards of operations, break it down to the smallest detail, as small as saying that join part B or component A to component B with 1 inch or 3/8 or 1 cm, as little as that, as little as fold this corner, turn it around this way. If you can break your processes down to this point, trust me, you would have a smooth production project at every point in time. So, should be willing to train. Exactly. I completely agree. That's what I always say to people. When clients come to me and they are lamenting about their workers, I just tell them that, see, there are certain things that you can inculcate into the habits of your workers, as long as that person is teachable. They may not be the highest skilled person, as long as they're teachable and they have, the basic sewing skills. You can actually train them and upgrade their skills at every point in time. Okay, so now, of course, if you're working with manufacturing partners, that's not your business. That headache is out of it. You don't have to stress about, because, of course, a manufacturing partner or a factory should be professional enough to handle all those intricacies. All right, so now let's move on to, I hope we got the part of the checklist. I'm going to go through it again. The first thing is to finalize your designs and approve your samples. That's the first thing. The second thing is to ensure that you have reliable vendors and source for a manufacturing partner that is reliable. That's if you're not doing an in-house production, if you're not doing it yourself in-house. The third thing is to be sure that you have what's it called? Let me quickly check my notes so that I don't. Okay, the third thing is to have a detailed plan, of the entire process, have an understanding of all the stages involved, and make proper plans, including your production schedule. The production schedule can be as detailed as how many pieces can we produce in a day. And guess what? The only way you can ascertain that is when you have done your sample phase, production, because during the sampling phase, the sample machinist is able to tell how long it will take to replicate or duplicate a particular product. So that way, that's the time that you're going to use to calculate every other thing. And it helps you to know that, okay, in a day, we're able to produce about 5 pieces of this garment, and then, of course, that gives you a projected outlook into when your entire production will be ready to be launched and sold. So that's the third thing. And then the fourth thing is to be financially ready. Be sure that you have the financial capacity, because one of the things, for example, in a terrain like Nigeria, I don't know what it is like in other African countries where power is still a big issue, a big limitation. Imagine if there was power outage for a long period of time, an extended period of time, and you did not factor that cost into it. You would need to run diesel, what's it called, generator. You're using that and you are spending money. So you need to have factored all those things out, while planning your production. And of course, the last thing is team skills and communication, because of course you need to have a good communication flow with your staff members. And if you are working with manufacturing partners, also have a good communication. One very good way of communicating with your manufacturing partners is the tech pack. I know that sounds interesting, like, okay, but it is the best way to communicate with your manufacturing partner. A tech pack basically includes every detail of your garment, of the particular product that you want to produce. And that's why you need to be thorough with the process of your tech pack. Very important. So a tech pack is not just the sketches, it's a technical drawing of your sketches. So it's not fancy, it is more detailed. It tells you how long a particular dimension is. It tells you, okay, from your shoulder tip to to your nape, this is how long, this is how wide it should be. It gives all those details, and so it's important to work on your tech pack. So having said all this, I also want to highlight Papa, I don't know how much time I have left.
I mean,
you please
yeah, you can
help
go
me
on.
with that information. Okay, all right, thank you. All right. So having said all those things about the basics that you need to be sure of before going into production, now once you start the production process itself, there are certain rudiments, like certain things that you also should not skip when it comes to the production. I know a lot of people tend to do, I don't know how common this is in other countries, African or otherwise. People tend to do what we call freehand cutting. And the freehand cutting is basically when each time you want to cut, you are calculating and working on your dimensions on either the fabric or something every time you want to produce something, which naturally just tells you that that's not a production in the real sense of it, because that limits you, it constrains you. Like it's how many of those things can you possibly produce in a day if you have to start that whole process from the scratch? So which brings me to the point of pattern making. Pattern making is a major thing, a major stage. Okay. I want us to keep dropping our points and questions in the chat box. I may not be able to respond to them now, but I'm sure we'll have a question and answer session where we'll be able to address those things so that I'm able to touch on everything that I need to touch on. All right, so the pattern making aspect is so important and so key to the fact that it's just you creating a template that is usable every point in time, usable, and it's just seamless, gives you no stress, because you are picking up that particular, even if you were to decide that you want to change the fabric that you want to use for that particular style, you can still pick up the same template, and you create as many pieces as possible. So when it comes to production itself, these are the key stages that I would like to highlight: the pattern making phase, the cutting phase. Of course, there's the pattern maker, and then there's the person who cuts the patterns on the fabric. There's the fitting phase. There's the quality control phase. There's the training, trimming and finishing stage. There's the quality assurance. Of course, this quality assurance comes when everything has been done, like the main things have been done. and then you're just trying to assure that, okay, does this meet the requirement, the standard, the basic standard of this particular garment? And of course, you are referring to your sample. Anytime you do quality assurance, anytime you do quality control, you are referring to your sample, because the sample is basically like the ideal product, the ideal end product. It's what shows you what the thing is supposed to look like. So at every point in time during the production, when quality control is going on, because quality control should be something that happens intermittently during the production cycle itself. At every point in time, you want to take a look at it and possibly hire people that handle that. What big brands like Zara and all those people do is that they send their representatives from their own company to go to these factories and be on site to monitor these processes. So what the person just does is to ensure that, okay, is it still looking like the sample? So basically your sample is the ideal prototype, basically is the ideal of what your end product should look like. So at every point of your production cycle, you are doing production quality control, and then towards the end, having done the trimming, the finishing, done all those things, you're also checking, like you're doing quality assurance. And of course, the last stage of production, the main production stage itself, the last process is packaging, where you are ready to ship off. And of course, we know that when it comes to packaging, there are other factors, the way you want to brand your item, how those are the things that basically portray or project your brand identity. So these are things that we need to look into when it comes to production. It's a wholesome thing, just like I said. And I'm of the opinion that I'm an advocate for not winging it. Don't wing it. If you wing it means that you just want to like cut corners and try to cut certain processes or bypass certain things because you think that they are not important. If you try to wing it, at some point in time, that decision is going to cost you. So it's just best to, yes, can you do it in a more, because of maybe you probably don't have a large budget and so you're considering not spending so much. Yes, that can be done. You can work with your budget. I'm not saying that because you now want to produce, you should spend all the monies. No, I'm not saying that. However, I'm saying that make sure you do due diligence through every process and every stage of garment production. It's very important because that is what ultimately ensures that you have a profitable business. That is what ensures that your product sells at the end of the day, and that is what people, your clients, would look at, the consumers. That is what makes them come back. That is what makes them come back. When we look at the entire cycle, when it comes to marketing and all that, there's the part of attracting customers, but there's also the part of sustaining and maintaining a good relationship with your customers. And definitely one way to ascertain that is to make sure that you've done everything necessary concerning your production, the entire production cycle. You've dotted your I's and you've crossed your T's, such that when the demand starts to go in, all you're just doing is sending a word to your manufacturing partner that, oh, okay, we are ready to produce, and then they're producing in batches. That is the framework that you should go by. I think I've come to the end of my session, like in terms of what I want to talk about. Yes, let's move to the question and answer. Yes, Papa, please, let's move into that. Thank you. Excuse me.
Thank you so much for Nkechi. That was really good. That was really nice. I was able to jot a couple of things from what all you said. So thank you for sharing your knowledge.
Thank you.
If you have any questions, this is the time for you to ask. And let's see how many questions she will be able to answer. So any questions, people?
I think there are some questions in the chat box. Maybe we can start with them before we take the ones that,
box then to see.
Okay, there's a question here. It says, it's from Arena. It says, as a new brand, how many designs would you recommend starting out with? Did you see that, Papa?
Yeah, I've seen it now. As a new brand, how many designs would you recommend starting out with, considering the cost of production and the work involved in getting a garment ready? Is there a minimum or maximum number you would suggest for a debut collection? So what do you think?
That's a very good question. Yeah, that's a very solid one. In fact, I think I was going to mention it, but it's more than maximum of 5. I think 5 is even too much. A maximum of 5, but minimum of like 2, 3. And this is why I say that. See, it's best for you to have a design that you've gone through all the process that I highlighted, and you are sure about it. You've gone through your sampling and everything. You can actually do 2 designs and do like 20 pieces of those designs. Of course, having carried out your market research and you've ascertained that people really like that product. So there's also this thing that we do. It's like a sampling. You're testing the market. That also has to happen. I said something earlier when I was talking. I think I was using Randa as a point of contact or as a reference point when I said it's possible to start out with this way and say, okay, maybe you made something for yourself and somebody else saw it and they liked it. That is an indication already, or an indicator that that garment is possibly something that people would like. So if you had like maybe 2 to 3 demands of that particular product, that is telling you something. That is telling you that that product is a viable product. Now, what I would say to a startup or an emerging brand is that that particular product that you have received positive feedback on is one good one to actually start with. So you can actually start with one product if you want to. Now, as time goes on, what you now start to see is the possibility of tweaking that same product, maybe deciding to use a different fabric type to interpret the same style. And that way, you also watch how people, the feedback from people. And then that way you grow. It's best to grow organically. And that comes, of course, when you have done a bit of testing the market. So I would say don't do much more than, I think that 5 is actually stretching it really. I would say don't do more than 3 designs. Now, for the numbers, of course, the numbers mean that 3 designs, you can decide to do like 5 sizes per design. And of course, that 5 designs, the 5, pieces per design could mean that you are doing maybe a size 8, a size 10, 12, 14, or you can also decide to do 3 pieces of size 8, 2 pieces of a size 12 or 10. And that's, of course, going to be an informed decision. And that's based on who your target audience is. You can't just make that decision from the top of your head. For example, if there's a brand who wants to cater to plus size people, of course, you're not looking at 8, 10. You're going to produce in the number of people that you know that, okay, within this age group or this age range, these are the kind of body types that exist within that age range. And these are the kind of people that would buy this product. So you see that there's a whole lot that goes into that. So yes, answering your question, I think that was Flo, right? I would say don't do more than 3 designs to start with.
That was Arena.
Okay, it was Arena. All right, yeah. So
Yeah.
don't do more than 3 designs to start with, please.
Yes, and I think Randa has something as well. But I don't necessarily think it's a question. She said, "Thank you very much for the great work. I want to understand why people have a design but don't buy it. Like a design, love a design rather, but don't buy it. My designs are very colorful, like any African design, but I struggle with selling my designs, although they are highly done in quality and everything." So
I think there are questions embedded in that actually.
yeah, sure.
So there's a question I could ask. The first thing I want to ask is, what's your price point? What are your price points? Like, would you say, like, so of course that comes from, you need to start with the target audience also. Who is your target audience? Who is your target market? If you've been able to define that clearly, then it would mean that you now need to find channels to market directly to people who will be able to afford your products. You know, you mentioned something about good quality finishing and all that. And that's something that people pay for. People do that. In fact, my brand, that's what I've carved, the niche that I've carved for my brand. The finishing has to be up to par. Like it can take me a longer time, but the finishing is important. So if that's the case, it means that I'm not sent to everybody. You won't buy my product for anything less than 20K. The minimum you get from my brand is 20K. That's the least. And that's because I've been able to define my target market and I've been able to stick with it. So I would say to you that please be sure of who your target market is, like who they are, the people in that age range, and then fiercely market. You know, you need to do that actively. Market to these people. Let them be the ones that see your product. Because the truth is, everybody can like things that are pretty. If anything is pretty, people tend to, like, you know, of course, compliment and say, oh, that's pretty. But it doesn't mean that they would buy it. I could see a Jaguar, someone drive a Jaguar, and I would say to the person, oh, that's a pretty car, but can I afford a Jaguar at this point? No, it means that I don't have the buying power. So you need to be sure of who your target market is, people that have the buying power to afford the kind of product that you are providing in terms of your quality and the designs. I hope I've been able to answer your question, Randa.
Yeah, I think that I mean, I'm not Randa. But yeah,
Yes.
I think you were able to do justice from my own perspective in the statement that she made with getting the questions out of it and things like that. Yes, she said thanks a lot.
All right.
So that's done. Then we have BAF 2 saying, how do you know if a manufacturer is the right fit for you? And would you recommend manufacturing locally when you start, or going to a more popular production hubs that is Asia?
Okay, so I'm going to answer that question I think I'm just going to be diplomatic about it. So
Okay.
I would recommend actually starting, you know, from home, like locally, doing it locally. And that's because I'm pro-local. Like, I believe that we actually have the capacity. We do. You know, there used to be a time when we said that we don't have the right skill set. But those are the days, and they've gone. Those days are like well gone. Now we have the capacity actually to produce locally in terms of people, human capital. We do. A lot of people are interested in fashion. There are a lot of fashion enthusiasts who are doing great things within the space. There are a lot of people who are technically inclined, even in the fashion space. So I would say do it locally. Now, I also understand the challenges that come with that, you know, and I mentioned one earlier about people overestimating themselves or overhyping themselves and saying that I can do this, and then you end up realizing that they are not able to meet up to the standard or quality that you want. So this is what I always say to people. Anytime any partner reaches out to me, any client reaches out to me, this is what I do. I stand as the middle person and I help you source for a manufacturing partner. Now, there are a lot of people like me, platforms like me, who are like intermediaries, basically, or the middlemen between a client and factories. And that's because we've carried out we've done the necessary findings and all that, and we are able to refer you to the right manufacturing partner. So what I would say is, please liaise with people, collaborate with people, like reach out to people within in your industry. I'm sure you have such in Kenya, in other countries, you know, people representing different countries here. I'm sure you have platforms like that, like register with them and see what they can do. Then apart from that, I've also realized that most of the time designers have this issue of not following, I don't know how to explain it. Like, you just want certain things to run quickly. It's also still a process. I had a client recently that I was consulting for her. And of course, I helped to hire or recruit a manufacturing partner. What I did was to be in every single meeting with them. And I realized at some point that my client was slacking. How was she slacking? She wasn't ready to be part of all the meetings that we had. In fact, there was a time that she sent a representative. And eventually, at the end of that meeting, I went back to her and told her that, no, you're going to have to make time out to attend this meeting. And why? Because you have the idea, you know what you want. And so we need to have dedicated times where we meet with the manufacturing partner and whoever it is that is the middle person, just to hash out things. You know, there's some certain conversations that must be had. Those conversations must happen. So in doing that, it means that you must definitely make time out to you must make time out to attend such meetings and of course collaborate with the right people who can connect you to the right alone, because there are people who actually can ensure that that process is a lot smoother. Yeah. Answer the question. Can we move on? Okay, great.
Thank you so much, Marani Keji. So the next question here would be my second question. That's from Irena, actually. She says, thank you so much for the useful info. My second question was what profit margin should we be aiming for on a final unit price to ensure we remain profitable? In my research, I have seen 2 to 3x markup, but I'm not sure what is the industry standard. So what do you think the industry standard is?
All right, so I wouldn't even call it an industry standard thing, although there's a general thing. Now, just as you mentioned, between 2 to 3 times markup times your, the cost of production and all that. I currently do times 3. However, everything is still depends. See, anybody can wake up today and say that for the kind of product that I want to launch, of course, you're also still going to do due diligence on that product type. I'm not saying that you make something substandard and say you're selling it's a luxury product. That's wrong. In fact, it will catch up with you at some point. But what I'm saying is this: your target audience basically matters, and the kind of business model that you're running with. If your business model is that, okay, I want to sell my business type or my product type, the category of my product, it can fall into ready to wear, mass production. It can fall into handcrafted things like so. Takes a lot of time before we do it. It can fall into luxury, it can fall into haute couture, all those things. You need to look at it from that angle. So when you do, then that informs the kind of, everything goes back to your target market again. Because there are people, I'm saying it again, that can afford to buy it at whatever rates you choose to in terms of your profit margin. So if I decide now, and I've stuck to it for a while now, of course, after that COVID-19 hit, I changed my strategy. I no longer do ready to wear. I currently don't do ready to wear. I do pre-order. And how it works is that I've set a range for how much I am going to produce for you or make clothes for you. Now, this seems to be us talking about what's it called? Things that are made on the go, not large scale. But I've set that limit, and I'm not going to go beyond it. I'm not going to drop it for anyone, because that is what keeps my business going. Now you need to think about the overhead cost, the cost of running that production. Electricity supply, your labor, you're paying your workers. And if you're not doing it in-house, your manufacturing partners are getting something. The prices of raw materials are also changing. Sis, I'm sorry to use that word, but sis, please mark it up to as high as you need it to be. But do a proper finding to know who your target audience are and market actively to those people. And you would realize that you actually have people who have the buying power to buy those things. I hope I've answered your question.
Yes, thank you. I think that you did justice to that. I don't think we have any other questions. Is there anyone else that wants to ask a question? Oh, Arena also already said, thank you so much. Thank you. Yes, you did, rather. Is there any other person that have any question for?
Can I just quickly address a comment that was made earlier? I think it was Flo that made the comment about true. but African designers should be willing to train and upgrade the skills of their workers. It's something that I advocate for, actually. And but on the flip side, what I've realized is that the complaint or the feedback has been that designers actually do that. Some are willing to do that. And when they do that, what happens is that these employees eventually now leave the business, because they've been trained. Now they are solid. Now there's a demand for them in other places. And of course, they feel that they can earn more money. So this is what I tell people. Number one, you don't have permanent access to a what's it called? A worker, an employee. You don't own the employee. Make peace with that and you will be fine. You don't own an employee. However, having invested so much in them, what you can do to safeguard yourself is maybe have them sign a bond that, okay, having gone through this training or having exposed you to this training, you possibly even brought in some experts from Pakistan or wherever, to train them and all that. Having done that, they have the responsibility to stay with your business for about 2 to 3 years. And while that is going on, you will bring something in, which is what we call, I'm trying to, succession of employees. There's a term for it that I'm forgetting now. It's a term that is known in the human resource management space. Basically, it's the fact that you are bringing in someone else to understudy that person for that period of time. So what you're doing essentially is safeguarding your workforce. You need to safeguard your workforce. And these are things that we do not know as fashion business owners. We think it's automatic. It's not automatic. When you look at it, other companies, big companies that are not even fashion related, how do they cope with employees that leave sometimes? Life goes on. You can't say that, because I taught this person. No, you can't hold on. You don't own an employee. You don't own your worker. But what you can just do to safeguard yourself is just to make sure that there is a succession plan in place. So you bring up new people to understudy that person that has learned so much on the job, and you make sure that, and that's why SOPs are also very important in your business. If you create standards of operations, it means that anybody can come into that business today, as long as they have certain basic knowledge, they're able to pick it up and run with it. I like to refer to these parts. It's in the Bible. For those that are not Christians, it's okay. But it talks about the fact that make the vision plain, write it down. So that, it's the latter part that I like to refer to. It says, so that anyone who sees it can run with it. Meaning that a layman, who you would refer to as a layman, probably be someone who's not so highly skilled, can see it and see that template, your SOPs, and be able to run with it. And that's what you want to do for yourself each time. That's the way to safeguard your workforce. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Marian Nkechi. Someone is asking for your contact.
Okay. Do I put it here, or I don't know how that works?
Yeah, you can just put it in the chat box. Yeah.
Okay. I'm just going to copy my Instagram link. I think from there it will be easier to reach me.
Yes.
Your profile. Copy link. Okay. Can we see it? I've sent it. That's the link to my Instagram page. So I guess from there we'll be able to, I can share my number and my email from that. You can reach me via my Instagram page.
Yes, thank you so much, Marian Nkechi, for that beautiful training that you just gave us today. Like I was saying earlier, someone is saying something. Hold on one second.
Sustain our customers.
Oh, can you please let us know the ways we can sustain our customers? Okay, this will be the last question that we'll be taking. Yeah, can you?
Yeah, so one thing I'm learning now, and I had to learn the hard way. Most of the things that I've been able to share on this talk are just based on experiences, things that I learned as a business owner myself, and one thing that I realized is that there was a period in time, and that was still during that COVID time, that I lost a lot of clients. And that was because I transitioned from ready to wear to pre-order. You know, each time they all reached out and said, oh, we want to get this dress. It wasn't available. They had to pre-order. You know, but one thing I realized was that there was a communication gap. The best way to retain your customers is to have a tight communication line. And how do you do that? Have a mailing list. How do you have access to your customers' mobile numbers? Sometimes just reach out, you know, okay, can I have your email address just to know, so that I can send you like updates when we launch new collections. You make them feel like they are getting, how do I put it now? Like special treatment in that sense, making them feel that, oh, as soon as we launch a new collection, you will be the first person to hear. That naturally makes people feel like, oh, okay, you know, it means that, and of course, because they bought good products from you, products that they're happy with, you know, they won't continue to, but you need to communicate. That's the best way. That's the best thing I can say to you. And of course, there should be times when you are offer like loyalty discounts, you know, things like that, sales, sometimes free delivery. Those are the things that basically help to that basically help to sustain and maintain your relationship with your customers. If you don't have time to do that, you may need to also outsource someone to be your there's something they call them, not necessarily marketing person, but someone that handles your I think they call them relationship managers or something like that for your business. They are the people that make your customers happy, basically. I think I've heard someone refer to them as customer happy person or something like that. I've forgotten how they refer to it. But basically, that's, if you make a customer happy, they would forever be loyal. That's just the truth. Okay, I think Flo just shared some resources for Tech Park. Yes, download. So for those who mentioned something about what Tech Park is, yes, definitely. Yes, I can sell it as an end of collection line sales. So what I ended up doing, actually, at some point I did like a sales on it, but of course I didn't exhaust the entire thing. I did sales on some, even like when we were coming out of the COVID era, started selling some on sales, and I did sell some of them, but I have a few ones left. So this is what I do now for customers that were you know, who were faithful back then and are still patronizing me. Sometimes I just do like, I know it looks like I'm dashing out, but I do it just to like give them like I know they would like it. In fact, I did one recently and the person was shocked because she pulled out an old picture from my page and said, do you still have this item? Unfortunately, I still had it. It was one of the collections. And so what I just did was to sell it at a very, very low rate. And I sold it to her. And for me, that's still me gaining, because the truth is, just like I said, they are quick. Trust me, you want their loyalty. Thank you.
All right, that brings us to the close of our Q&A section, and we're going to be closing out this particular event. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining today for this session. We still have a couple more sessions to go, and you can join those ones as well in case you haven't necessarily registered to join. You still can. And the next session is engaging with global retailers. So we hope to see you there. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Morenikeji, for this wonderful class. And yes, thank you everyone for joining. See you at the next session. And it's still African Fashion Conference. And this is the first conference like this for us. So it's kind of special. Thank you.
Thank you.